Louise, we're talking about a love story today. Tell me about how you met Craig and what you were doing.
Oh, well, Claire, it was a pretty traditional sort of Aussie story, I guess. I'd been on patrol down at Bondi for a summer season, and our patrol captain ordered us over to Bondi Icebergs for an end of season celebration, at which point Moose turned up to our table and he seemed to know a lot of people, and we just met, and I guess you could say we instantly fell in love. He's, a bit of a bon vivant sort of character, and he'd just light up a room and he'd bring a lot of joy into any environment.
How did he get the nickname Moose?
It's a good question, actually. I think it was an advertising moniker. I think that was given to him. His advertising partner was named Rocky, so Rocky and Moose. So that was, I think, the story behind it.
So he worked in that world of hyper-literate, super articulate people. He was a great writer. He was a copywriter. Words must have played a big role in the early days of your romance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that struck me the most is that he's incredibly witty and very funny, and he just had a real knack with being able to solve a kind of client problem, I guess, in a creative advertising setting. But he'd often write me beautiful cards and letters, which I've of course still kept, but yeah, very special.
And over the years, you started to notice some changes in his behaviour. Looking back now, what was the first thing that made you aware that something was different?
I think it was a lot of just unusual sort of behaviour that I couldn't quite put my finger on. He seemed to genuinely love me. He was very caring and kind. He was very supportive, but in the next breath, he wouldn't turn up to things. He would become a little bit erratic. And I look back on some of those moments where I think he was masking a lot of his vulnerabilities for a long period of time.
Did that make it easier for you to then take the next step of exploring whether there was something neurological going on?
Well, we had a diagnosis that there was an early onset dementia, and it was always an alcohol-related dementia. I mean, it was clear that he was not able to work. His driver licence was cancelled. There were things that he wasn't able to do, but we were sort of then put into a cycle, I suppose, of specialist care and lots of doctor's appointments, lots of neuro conversations that were had, and lots of testing and all of those things. But by and large, he was able to live a sort of, a fairly happy, good life for a period of time.
One of the things that has stopped CTE being discussed widely in Australia is shame. People feel embarrassed about the symptoms that they end up displaying and their inability to be the kind of independent people who they were before. The condition that Craig was diagnosed with, alcohol-related dementia, adds a whole other layer of shame, doesn't it?
There's absolutely a stigma attached to that. And I think even though Craig's reading from a different chapter out of the book of dementia, it's one and the same, because there is often a stigma, and thinking more broadly about dementia as the umbrella term that we use. I'd love to one day talk about dementia positivity, but there really isn't now, because there's no cure, there's no happy story, there's no surgery, there's no magic pill. Something that I think we really need to start thinking about, shifting our attention to dementia as an important area that's becoming more and more urgent. It will overtake cancer as the leading cause of death next year in Australia.
You and I have been friends for years, and you've been very supportive to me as I watched my mother go through the diagnosis of dementia, and you've listened patiently to me talking about that a lot. You didn't talk much about your own situation. You would allude to it in passing, but this is the first time we've really talked about it in detail. What made the difference for you? Why do you want to talk about it now?
I think in Fiona's story that she so beautifully crafted, on the surface it might read like a love story, which of course it is, but if you peel back the layers, there's a sinister other story, and that's a story about dementia. And I think where I felt that I needed to talk about it more is I received it was actually a video or a photo of Craig Moose standing at a kitchen bench in his care home, and he was struggling to write his name. And even though it was a beautiful video and it was sent with the right intent, it was heartbreaking for me, because I realised then that this insidious disease had robbed him of his skills that he was so good at.